Hello, I'm Stuart Bowes, and you're watching or listening to the Net Hero podcast. This is a podcast for you if you care about what we're doing to the planet. You don't have to be an eco-warrior. We believe business is the solution to making things better. But we're for people who want to make that difference by either cutting their emissions or coming up with ideas that can help us do things a bit better. We've featured politicians, academics, lots and lots of business people, entrepreneurs, inventors, and of course people who are just interested in doing the right thing. So sit back, listen and enjoy, and make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Please share it with your friends and colleagues, and you can always check out our two websites that cover all of this, Energy Live News and futurenetzero.com. This podcast is purely editorial, so sit back and enjoy this week's episode. Now, this episode is all about my favourite subject, women. Oh, you knew that was coming. Good old sexist jokes are brilliant because the person I've got on, she's known me for 15 years. We're of the same vintage, and she has been kicking butt on women's equality for all that time. The question is, though, why is it that we still don't have enough ladies, girls, and women in senior executive roles across the sector? Things have changed so much since COVID, hybrid working. We all have an ability to now kind of work from where we want to. Plus, you've had recruitment drives. Literally every government since the coalition government have been pushing this. So why hasn't it changed? I'm delighted to say she's everywhere. She's here, there, she's everywhere. Jo Butlin joins me today. Jo, how are you?
I'm really good, thank you, Sumit. And you're on one of my favourite subjects. I've got many favourite subjects, but
I know you got 700 jobs, but for today we're talking about
women.
Women's Utility Network. But for people who don't know you the way I do, when did you, before we could talk about what WUN does, when did you get into energy? What was your background?
Oh, I fell into energy. So I trained as an accountant way back when, and my first job out of industry was I fell into what was then Eastern Energy, which shows how old I am. And at the time, I thought, how interesting can turn the lights on and off be? And 30 years later, it's still really, really interesting. So it's become an absolute passion. And through that time, we've gone from big coal plant through a real revolution in the energy industry. So I'm delighted to be in all sorts of different parts of it.
Did you transfer over through? So were you doing sort of the account work, then you went to the finance department, or how did you transition to where your career went?
Absolute classic. So having trained as a chartered accountant, I joined internal audit, which is an absolute classic way in.
Yeah.
Then went into finance, then went into procurement, then ended up running a business. And to be honest, I never wanted to be a real accountant. I wanted the skills, I wanted the experience.
You got too much personality, Jo. Sorry.
Thank you. But actually, it's been invaluable. I mean, it's brilliant training. From then I just evolved and followed opportunities, really. So I've moved around a lot and done a lot of things, and that's just added to everything I know today. And so I'm now playing it all back again.
Yeah, I mean, you've worked for brokers, you work for suppliers, you've been across. You do work with regulators. You're sitting across it all. How many more women do you see these days than you did way back in 19?
Good news is a lot more. Well, just the fact we've got 9,500 members for one, and we've got 70 partners. It shows that things have moved a long way.
Yeah,
there are still far too many occasions though where you'll walk into a room and you're the only female, and it's less common, but it still happens a lot. I think the interesting piece is how it's moving now from, and we talk a lot in WUN, it's not just about women, it's actually about inclusion. It's about how do you get really inclusive workplaces so everybody can be themselves. And, from the work we've done, a lot of the challenge is women just don't feel they can be themselves because it is still traditional business ways of doing business are male dominated.
But that could apply to any sector, couldn't it?
To be honest, everything that we're finding, doing, working on in WUN could be applied to any sector in any part of the sector. In utilities, we're particularly bad. Our statistics. I mean, we started WUN because of statistics, and They are still woeful. We are very underrepresented in senior exec roles. We did a survey last year, and 1 in 3 women were looking to leave the sector.
Wow.
And yeah. I mean, that was a real shock, I think, to everybody. And it's because it's exhausting. It's hard work when you're working you're pushing water uphill a lot of the time. You're not, you're having to perform, you're having to adopt male behaviors, whatever it might be. And that's exhausting. So and I was talking to somebody this morning, a lot of women just go, sod it, you don't deserve me, I'm off.
Yeah.
And then others just get worn down by it and get their confidence chipped away over time. So what one is about is really just providing support for women in the sector to help them thrive and develop their career and really, really find a tribe of supporters.
I think, were you one of the people who set up the women?
Yeah. So we
Was you and
started.
Georgina, was that right? I can't
No,
remember.
no. So there were 6 of us sat around the table. In fact, Hayley Monks and myself are the 2 who've sort of really carried on with it, and although all the founders are still supporters.
So how did it come about? What was it that
We literally. So if you remember a name from the past, Angela Peart, who
yes,
she just saw some of the challenges. So she got a bunch of senior women who we'd all reached senior levels in organisations, and she got us round a table, and it literally started over lunch. And we were all saying, well, actually, we've got to our positions fine. It was okay. But we look at the statistics and they're awful. And because we're in these positions, we need to do something about it, which is how one started. And we started with a bright idea and it's grown from there. So it grew from very small seeds. And I think why it's successful is because we're very practically based. We're not in the burn your bras feminist sort of stuff. It's just about how do we support women? How do we actually give them the tools, techniques, arms around them, give them inspiring stories so that they can be elevated in organisations. We work at all different levels in all different ways through one. But important to us was it always had to be practically based. It's like we're not in the burn your bra territory.
Well, you'd have no. That'd be the way to do it.
Yeah, it'd be awful.
The way that you'd look at it is, and you know what I'm going to say now. People say, "Well, what's the point of this?" Right? Instead of you're just moaning, right? You're just moaning. You create a group. It's another group, and there are loads of these groups out there, and it's this group and that group and that. Just get on with it. The best person for the job should be the one that gets it. And maybe women aren't applying, or maybe they're not good enough, all of that sort of stuff. What's your response to that? Because part of that is probably true, that there's men, and part of it is probably not.
You obviously don't know one. So when I say the importance for us was being practical,
Yeah.
we do not moan. We're all in the what can we do to help? What can we do to support? So actually, our events, our podcasts, our training, our mentoring scheme. I've been at Future Utilities this morning, and we've now got 400 mentees on our scheme. So it's all about practical support for women. So we're not in the moan piece.
Yeah, give us more. Yeah, all right.
Give us more, make it better. It's actually let's support women in being the best they can be. And what we're doing increasingly, I can't remember what the question was now, but actually that whole piece around inclusion and how do we get male allies? Because actually most men agree that diverse workforces are better. And if you don't agree, just look at the statistics. Actually, more successful businesses, about 25% more successful if you've got diversity. And so it's like, I think there's an education piece on both sides around why do women not feel comfortable? And we've just done the survey, and actually 91% of the businesses in our survey have now got policies to support flexible working, to support, work-life balance, all those things. So in some ways, tick. We've got the policy, but women were still reporting, I still don't feel comfortable. I still don't feel. And
that's very interesting, isn't it?
There's loads and loads of layers of it. There's a lot of banter that just chips away at women's confidence. And what's banter to some people is really hurtful to others. And over half the respondents to the survey said, actually, I've experienced or seen inappropriate behaviour and it's not being dealt with. And that's the key. And so it's like, actually, what's banter? There was a brilliant example the other day. It's another board member, actually, who she was chatting to a guy who was incredibly supportive and totally on the page in terms of we need diverse workforces. And he said, so now if there is inappropriate behaviour in the room and there's a woman in the room, then I call it out. Mm-hmm. And Sarah immediately came back. I thought it was fantastic. Yes. If there isn't a woman in the room, do you still call out the inappropriate behaviour?
Probably not.
No,
No,
no, don't do it. So I
no.
think it's this sort of it's little it's not sort of one thing. It's
Yeah,
just about and actually the big theme for us now is around culture, and it is this inclusive piece
yeah.
because actually a lot of the stuff that's holding women back is also holding a load of men back because they don't want to be big egotistical mansplaining. It's about how do we actually
You
get.
just described me, Joe. That's outrageous.
Not I haven't. I know you. It's about trying to get something that works for everyone.
No, no, I get it. I get it. The thing I'm going to ask though is you raise a very interesting thing about the banter thing, and it could be a very English thing. I don't, I haven't really, I've never worked abroad. I don't
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
but part of the thing is that, especially I've come from the world of journalism. It's all about banter,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Always been, and I think loads of places, particularly with energy, there are people digging holes and playing with things that will kill them. Really high. There's an almost whether it's gallows, there's been this culture around it, right? And then also, you just look at kind of society. British society is about taking the piss. It always
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
It's self-deprecation, all of that. Do you think that can be sort of, and loads of women in my career have bantered as much as, I have.
Me for a start.
Yeah, exactly. It's been worse, actually. But is that sort of what I'm trying to get is that really just a passage of time that means the people who are coming up now, they're different, young men are different, young women are different? Or is it a shift of kind of like, actually, this is what we've been built on? It's quite tricky. You can have the policies of working from home,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
menstruation days, all of those things, but this stuff is just in sort of ingrained.
And it is. And to be honest, do
Of course it is. You're
it's
one of the
not.
best.
It's about the inappropriate. So it's like
Yeah,
actually
I
being
get it.
conscious of when's it appropriate and when if you're taking the piss from somebody and it's actually chipping away because they're different. It's like actually because they're different, you then have a that's the inappropriate stuff. It's like you can have banter easily with.
Is that the thing that the women are more worried about now? Because I think, you go back to when I started my career in the late 80s, it was about maternity leave, right? It was about that. COVID changed everything. As I said just before we recorded, I know energy companies that have got hybrid working. Mums can go and pick up their kids and continue to do their jobs. They're trying to keep women who have children. And I've
Yeah,
got
yeah,
two female staff
yeah,
they're listening. I would want them to continue because it takes ages to train people and you want them to stay in the job. So, in a way, you said earlier, tick policy. We've done a lot. We've done a real,
and we have. I mean, we've moved a long way.
yeah.
And I always tell people about, when I first started out, I was called into somebody's office and told that maybe I should wear high heels and shoulder pads. I mean, and
No, you're dating yourself now.
yeah,
This is
I know,
the,
I really should, I really dated myself, but that just shows how far we have moved.
yes.
But I think it's this piece that was really interesting from our survey this year that
Yeah.
even though all those policies are in place, women still feel guilty about using them.
Oh,
And then
guilty
there's a
about
real
taking, oh,
actually,
really?
if I leave early to go and pick
Yeah.
up my kid, I'm allowed
Yeah.
to, but I feel guilty about it. And then you've
Ah,
got the really interesting piece, and we had an exec dinner when we were discussing it. So all the sort of shared parental leave and
yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
husbands and partners to looking after the kids as much. There's a real stigma still attached to men taking the primary role. So I was talking to somebody this morning who's saying, my husband actually would love to give up his work and look after the kids, but it's the stigma from his mates
Yeah. Yeah.
about doing. So
Well, I have to go and pick the kid up after this, but I'll tell
yeah,
you what, I couldn't do that full time.
yeah, and
But no,
that's
I get it. I do get it. There are people.
what we're not saying is it's
Yeah,
one fix, it's one thing. The
yeah,
banter is one thing. The guilt. I mean, women are sometimes their own worst enemies, and
true.
we talk a lot about men will apply for a job if they're sort of 80% competent for it,
Yeah,
and women will go, oh no, I can't quite do 100%. I'm not applying.
yeah.
So there's loads and
No, and that's something I have seen as for sure in my career.
yeah,
Women are not confident enough even in their own abilities when we can see it out there.
yeah,
But the other point, I think, we did our first big conference was 2012, right? So we're going back flipping out 13 years, and we did a women in energy panel. I can't remember if you were part of it, but I remember we
I can't
did it.
remember if I was or not there.
Yeah, but you might have been. Who knows? There were many women, so you probably were on it actually.
I was just one of them ones.
But and it raised kind of like I always thought, having come from journalism and media where the newsroom was 50-50, you know, you go into those, and I saw it. The room was all white. It was all bald, and it was all men. That was all those things. And it has changed a bit, but
Oh, it's
not much.
changed,
You're
yeah.
right. But the caveat I would say is, if I then went to a school, nursery school, my kids' nursery school, it's all female, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you go to certain jobs. So is it that also perhaps utilities have been a sector that generally women have not even thought about? But it's
No,
not,
it's interesting because actually when you look at women coming into the sector,
yeah.
it's about 50-50.
Is it really?
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So,
Wow.
and what's happening is that as the pyramid, they're dropping out. So that third who are wanting to leave the sector, and it is, I mean, and it is, some people are just exhausted by it. Some people, just, well, I'll go and work somewhere where I'm valued.
Yeah.
And so, and some are, it's this confidence erosion. And it's not unique to utility sector,
No, I get it, but we might as well talk about, yeah.
but it's really stark. And so, and it does go back to this cultural piece that, whilst there's the policies and the piece, it's actually we've got to change how we work and how we operate. And it's interesting, you can start to look at businesses which have got either equal or even sort of female dominated leadership teams, and they're quite different in how they operate and
Yeah.
they're quite different how they present. So it's, and actually what all we're saying with one is you need to get the best out of men and women, actually. But at the moment, you ain't getting the best out of women because they're self-selecting out or they're having their confidence destroyed.
Is it actually very interesting you said it's sort of 50-50 coming in because we've heard about all the STEM that, science, technology, engineering, maths, all that stuff. And I think, by the time this goes out, it'll be sort of Women in Engineering Day. There's all these kind of measures. You have girls are really starting to get into science, which is great.
Yeah,
Girls are doing
yeah,
different things. But I always try and say energy is everything now. You can work in
yes.
PR, you can work
And
in
and
HR, you can do it at the and we've seemed to be very much we want to get the women on the oil rigs, on the wind farms, in the nuclear power stations. What about people just doing just
yeah.
normal jobs?
Well, one to be honest, we have never focused on STEM
Right. Is
because
that
we're
conscious?
we're consciously not, because we're about actually you can do any role you like. There are opportunities in every discipline. And actually, for a science background, you can do anything. And we're also really consciously not about leadership. So, some other organizations are very focused on we need to
Yeah,
get
yeah. Board
women
numbers.
into leadership.
Yeah,
We're all about how do we start at the bottom and help women throughout their careers. And some women don't even want to be senior, So it's like it's not about you've got to become, top boss. It's just like we want you to be the best you can be in the environment you're working in. So for example, we're doing some training. We've now got some brilliant training programs actually, which are written by women for women, and it's everything we've learned on one. And some of it is sort of generic leadership skills, but the one that we're about to launch is called, we have Thrive, Strive. The one we're about to is Arrive, and that's really for new women coming into the sector, so sort of give them the tools early on. So it's almost like how do we capture them early? So that actually this movement just continues and continues.
the network itself, I assume it needs money. So is it sponsored by energy companies? How do you get funding so you can do these things?
Really important again for us from day one was it's got to be free for women. You don't need we should not be charging women for being women.
Yeah, join this. By the way, it's a subscription.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So from day one, it's been supported by partners, and we've now got over 70 partners. So if you look at who supports us, it's almost we're now at the stage where it's like, why are you not supporting us? Because everybody else is, and we have brilliant partners. So it's a partnership model. So they fund everything we do, and we also have partners who are supporters in kind. So they'll host dinners for us and provide amazing venues for us and those sort of things. So it's we started off on
yeah.
the beg, borrow, and steal thing, but actually now we have partners coming to
So,
us on a really regular. I mean, we've got the amazing support base.
so you could say that they are responding. They are. They want to get
Yeah,
involved.
yeah. People like what we're doing, and it's not, and I think they like what we're doing because it's not exactly as you started out on. It's the, you know,
Yeah.
moan piece. It's all about how do we create something that's practical and supportive, and it's focused on the women rather than fixing the system. It's like, how do you make yourself the best you can possibly be and build your network?
I don't know if you know this, but the people who support you, do you think the people who decide, let's support Women's Utility Network, are there men or women in these organisations? Because that'd be, it's a minute.
It's a mix.
Wow.
It's a real mix, and we've got. I mean, we're increasingly building.
I'm
It's going to
already
be so
at
hard, isn't
you.
it? We're increasingly building our male allies, and so we've had male only panels. We have lots of male podcasts. We've got a lot of supporters, men and women,
Yeah.
who get it and want to be part of it. And it's a mix. Sometimes we're working with the HRDs, or sometimes we're working with the CEOs. It really is. And very often people are just going, "Why are we not a
What do you
partner?"
want? Yeah.
And we keep it low. We keep it low, actually. That's the other important thing, because historically it's all been about the big boys in the sector. And we're really, really keen that, because there are so
Absolutely.
many startups,
Oh,
so many
yeah.
small companies these days, how do we make it accessible for everybody?
And also, I think the thing is, people can join, like I said, you can join an energy broker, a supplier, you can work in regulation, you can work, I mean, technologies, but there's so many companies in the
Yeah.
supply chain now. It's all of this. Sorry, what year did it start?
2018 was the starting lunch.
So this is seven years. In 7 years, do you believe, apart from growth and all that, you've got more men, what do you think is achieved in 7 years?
I think the biggest achievement, or the bit that makes me get all emotional, is actually we've done really good things for women in the sector. So the things that I go, we're doing something real here, is when women come up to me and go, "One has changed my life." And I mean, that just makes me go, "Oh my God." And then through the mentoring scheme, we help women get
Yeah,
they move jobs. So it's like, I've been stuck
yeah,
in this role for years.
yeah.
How do I move? And then you help them through it, and they end up somewhere else. We've had senior women who have never been asked to share their story, but they come on a podcast and talk about it. And actually, it's really humbling to hear what they've done, but really inspiring
Right,
for
gotcha.
those further down the chain
Yeah,
to go, "Do
yeah.
you know what? They're normal." I remember somebody once said to me, "You're normal, aren't you?" I was like,
Hang on, normal.
"Relatively." It's
I know you joke.
it's only relative, but yeah. To be honest, we've gone through as a board, we've gone through, do we need, targets and these sort of things? And we've gone, no, actually, this is a movement. It's about supporting. It's about,
No, I like that. I get that. I really like the fact that you're not trying to say we want 15% or 20% or whatever. You just want to help people. That's basically it.
and we want women to be the best they
Mm.
can be. So it's very focused at, it's not about the bashing. It's about actually, how do we help you? We've done loads of skills-based stuff. We've done loads of stuff around imposter syndrome. We've done, the mentoring scheme is amazing. The podcasts are amazing. The events leave me just with hairs standing up on my, it's an amazing buzz in the room. And actually, women then network with other women. You get these sort of smaller networks, and then you hear of somebody supporting somebody, or somebody giving them an introduction, whatever it is. And it's that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It's the organic stuff that actually makes the real difference.
Just before we go, men have generally done, business has always been, it still goes on, right? People play golf and do that sort of stuff, which I can't bloody
Yeah,
stand, by
yeah.
the way. But anyway, you go for a beer, you're going to have a chat. And I've done business with women and I've done business with men, and it's pretty much the same thing. You meet them, maybe you have a drink, you have a chat, whatever, you do it that way. Or there's been kind of, people buy off people, or people help other people because they feel they're sort of, there's a link. Yeah, it's something. It could be something silly, like, you like the same movies, or it doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is this, the progression you're seeing with the members? Are they being helped by women who, well, number one, are they being helped by women, or are they being helped by men as well? And number two, are they being helped by women who feel either aggrieved that something didn't exist like this when they started, or of the other side, which is just kind of, it never bothered me anyway, but here I am to help you. Nuanced questions, but just what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah. So simple answer is the women involved, full range, because they've had
Yeah,
male mentors, they've had, supporters, allies, whatever. Probably not as many, because of the difference in how
yeah,
women connect and how men connect. Naturally there's more connections with men, and that's part of what, it's
yeah,
not wrong, it's just different. But I always use the example, I'll come back to your question in a minute, but I always use the example that, if men walk into a room, actually the common language is quite
too
often,
right.
"Did you see the match at the weekend?"
Guilty.
And actually half
No,
the men in the room don't actually care what the answer is, but it's an opener. If women walk into a room, they might say, "I really like your dress," or I love your nail varnish. And actually, again, don't give a shit about their dress or nail
I get
varnish.
it.
But it's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
that point of connection. And so it's like, actually, how do you get a common topic that you come along and you go,
Yeah.
how was your weekend? Or
Yeah.
how are your kids? Or it's how do you get that inclusivity? So
Yeah.
actually, you're not
So you
excluding.
just summed up my entire life and my wife's. It's true.
You
It's
know,
really
you
true.
can see,
I never
see where we
noticed
do
that
this game.
how often I hear women go, "Oh, you look really nice today."
Language is so important, and you just don't think about it because it's not. And the thing is, the natural bit, if you're a woman and you're walking into a room and the conversation is,
Yeah.
how was the match?
No,
There's
true.
nothing
And
wrong
you
with
want to
that
get involved.
conversation. It's just that, I mean, for me, I've got nothing to add to that.
Well, Sohi, who does my
It's like,
production, she's got a lot to say about football. So there you go.
yeah, yeah. So and the thing is, it's not
Yeah.
men trying to be exclusive. It's just how you connect.
It's really interesting these things that you've come up from because they're all things that you probably already know, but you don't really ever think until you just mention it.
Well, you don't think about it. Yeah,
So getting back to where we want to be, some of it is numbers, right? Which is you change, and like I said, I came from media work where, in fact, probably it was more women than men in some cases, right? So you're just kind of used to it. And then there are people in different careers. So nurses are still generally more women than men, although there are loads of male nurses.
yeah, yeah.
Is there an aim with the Women's Utility Network to say we want to get more women, not because we want to tick a quota box, but just because that would just change things? Or are you hoping that actually what this is all about is just kind of people just feeling comfortable? Because there's two things. If the numbers go up,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
probably
It's
change everything. The other is you just make
yeah.
people more
I
comfortable.
mean, I think our fundamental belief is that
Yeah, yeah,
inclusive, diverse
yeah,
workforces produce better results. So that's factual. And so then it's saying, well, how do we make environments and cultures where everybody feels comfortable and everybody can be themselves? Because that's the other thing, authenticity. I mean, I think again from the survey, I'm trying to remember the numbers, but it's something like a third of women say, or it's only a third who say
Huh,
actually they're authentic at work
wow.
because they're then pretending to be something else or trying to fit into the culture. So how do you get a culture and environment where everybody
Yeah.
is themselves and can be the best and they can be the best versions of themselves and can add value and stuff. So I think that's where we're trying to get to. I mean, ultimately, I think you said at the
No, we
beginning, we
shouldn't.
shouldn't need
Shouldn't.
one. It's not but actually it's all about how do we create that environment. And we are seeing, there's some brilliant examples of it. And we are seeing some real shifts in some businesses. When you look at the diverse teams and leadership, they're fantastic and they have different cultures. Some of the boards I'm involved with and some of the businesses I'm involved with, there's real diversity. And my goodness, it pays back. So it's like, how do you get that as normal as opposed to abnormal?
So here's to Women's Utility Network not
Once we've done
existing.
that, it'll be done.
That's the train, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, that's the ultimate aim is that actually we don't need it. We shouldn't need it. It's normal.
I love it. You're doing yourself out of a job, even better.
It's just one of many to see, but as
Joe,
you
it's
know.
been an absolute pleasure. Do you know what? Thank you so much. Look, you know me, I've always thought that people should be taken as they are. And I think you and I are the same, which is there shouldn't be
Yeah, yeah,
quotas,
same page. Yeah.
but it should be that I think the sector should look at itself and go, what are we missing out on? I think that's what they're missing out on, really.
And all we're doing is pointing it out.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your time. Go off and do busy things you always do.
Absolute pleasure. Lovely to talk to you.
My thanks to Joe. Give us your thoughts. If you're a lady watching this, tell us what your experiences are on social media. So he is a lady. She's or a
Or a
man.
man.
Oh, man,
Or a
no.
man.
They're,
Say what you
they're,
think.
they're busy watching the football, Joe. So here is a lady. Thank you very much for the production this week. We'll be back with the Net Hero podcast next week. Please follow us on social media.
You've just heard the Net Hero podcast from FutureNetZero.com. Join us as we help you find ways to cut your carbon footprint as we head towards net zero. Subscribe and follow us on social media. FutureNetZero.com. Better business, better planet.